Hello and welcome to our presentation. Today we will be discussing the IS/LM model. My name is Raul and I will be going first. Next one. I will be talking about the goods market and IS relations. What is IS? IS stands for total investment equal total shares. And if you take a good look at the graph, you'll see a red line, which is a demand trend. The reason, so first I will explain what is this line. The demand or ZZ is an upward slanting on the ground for a given estimations of financing cost. Is an expansion in yield prompts an increment in the interest for merchandise through its belongings on utilization and venture. And the reason why it is a band instead of a line is because we have not accepted the utilization and venture relations and conditions straight. That's why the interest for products is an expanding capacity yields. And also equilibrium necessitates that the products for product be equivalent to the yield. Next one, please. If you take a good look at these two graphs, you will notice that it is a lot more different than the previous one that we saw. This is an expansion in the financial quotes that diminishes the interest for products at any degree of yield, prompting a decline in the harmony level of the yield. And because of that, equilibrium in the product markets infers that an expansion in the loan fee prompts a reduction in yield, which is why the IS curve is downward sloping. Included in the market implies that an increase in the interest rates leads to a decrease in output. And the reason why it's shifting is because changes in factors that decrease or increase in some other instances, demand for goods in the race shifted the IS curve to the left or to the right, again, depending on the instances. And if you take a good look at the if you take a good look at the figure 11/6, you will realize this is an increase in factors. However, it will be discussed a little bit later.
Now let's move on to the money market and LM relation. LM stands for liquidity, preference, money supply. In the previous chapter, we talked about the demand for money. As you can see on the left, the formula shows the relation between money, nominal income, and the interest rate. And now if we divide both sides of the equation by the price level, which is P, we'll get what we see on the right, namely the LM relation. Hence, we can restate our equilibrium condition as the condition that the real money supply, that is the money stock in terms of goods, not dollars, be equal to the real money demand, which depends on two variables, on real income Y and the interest rate I. An important insight from the equation is that for a given money supply, an increase in income automatically leads to an increase in the interest rate. In deriving the LM curve, we have to decide how we characterize monetary policy as the choice of M, the money stock, or as the choice of I, the interest rate. Historically, central banks focused directly on the money supply. As we discussed in class, this was true in the United States and much of Europe in the 1970s and early 1980s. Although in the past, central banks thought of the money supply as the monetary policy variable, they now focus directly on the interest rate. They choose an interest rate, call it I, and adjust the money supply so as to achieve it. By targeting the interest rate directly, the central bank automatically adopts a policy that will adjust the money supply to accommodate shocks to money demand. Such a policy prevents the shocks from having a significant effect on output and inflation and helps the central bank stabilize the economy. Keep in mind that in this chapter, we assume that the central bank chooses the interest rate and does what it needs to do with the money supply to achieve this interest rate. As a result, this will make for an extremely simple LM curve, namely a horizontal line in at the value of the interest rate I bar chosen by the central bank. From nominal to real interest rates. We know the real interest rate is what affects economic activity and enters the IS curve. So now you might wonder how changes in nominal interest rate impact the real interest rate. Well, the answer lies in this Fisher equation, which shows the relationship between these two interest rates. Nominal interest rate equals real interest rate plus inflation. The takeaway is that changes in nominal interest rate lead to changes in the real interest rate. so long as they're not offset by corresponding changes to inflation. From real to nominal interest rates, the sticky inflation assumption suggested by Keynes implies that in the short run, inflation displays inertia, adjusts slowly over time, and does not respond directly to monetary policy. In addition, central banks can set the real interest rate in the short run, and if inflation is zero, nominal interest rate equals real interest rate.
So now we are going to talk about putting the IS and the LM relations together. So any point on the downward sloping IS curve represents the equilibrium in the goods market. And any point on the horizontal LM line shows the equilibrium in the financial markets. In the graph, we can see that at point A, the intersection of both equilibrium relations are satisfied. Fiscal and monetary policy enables a country to stabilize the economy. Fiscal policy is related to spending levels and tax rates. The actions taken will affect the IS curve. As we can see in the graph, an increase in taxes will move the IS curve to the left, leading to a smaller output ending up into a fiscal contraction. Whereas for a fiscal expansion, a decrease in taxes will move the IS curve to the right, leading to a greater output. Monetary policy is about controlling money supply to achieve sustainable economic growth. The actions taken will affect the LM line. As we can see in the graph, a decrease in the, interest rates will move the LM line downwards, leading to a greater output ending up into a monetary expansion. Whereas for a monetary contraction, an increase in the interest rates will move the LM line upwards, leading to a smaller output.
The policy mix is a combination of monetary and fiscal policies. These policies influence output, inflation, interest rates, and unemployment. In most democratic countries, elected legislators control fiscal policy, while independent central banks handle monetary policy. The both common goal is low unemployment, stable prices, moderate interest rates, and healthy growth. Government budgets affect long term interest rates, while monetary policy affects short term ones. In this graph, the level of output Y0 yields virtual full employment at the existing price level. However, the existing rate of interest rate may be considered as too high. In this situation, it is possible for the government to reduce R by raising the tax total permanently, by shifting the IS to IS1 and reducing consumption demand. Example of this policy mix is in the 2008 financial crisis. The government passed fiscal expansionary tools, cutting taxes and increased spending. Then the central bank provided monetary stimulus by cutting short term interest rates. Fiscal policies are most effective when the economy is in deep depression. Another example of policy mix is sometimes when a government is eager to win popular support, it might cut taxes or boost spending despite a tight labor market and inflationary pressures. Those actions could force the central bank to raise interest rates. Policy mix in response to COVID 19, strong and sustained support will be needed to continue and evolve with the gradual recovery after this. When the recovery is slow, there may be a case for maintaining expansionary fiscal policies for a sustained period to stimulate broader household consumption and business investment. Stimulus during the recovery phase needs to be carefully timed and well targeted. For example, the United States is providing direct cash transfers to low and middle income households, while European countries have expanded income support by simplifying access to paid sick leave and unemployment benefits, notably for non standard workers. Ultimately, once economies have recovered, a shift towards restoring public finances can be anticipated. Here's our references. Thank you for listening.